Hello everyone, my name is Dakoba, and today I want to talk a little bit about how you can do a bear tank with a one button rotation to make bear tanking super easy, super simple, and how you might go about gearing, really just a general introduction to bear tanking, and then we'll take a look at a key that I ran with a pug group and see how these concepts apply. As far as gearing goes, item level is the most important thing, but you want haste and versatility. Those are your two stats, so I always try and take a piece that has at least either haste or versatility. If I could just go full haste and verse, I probably would. I think it's higher DPS to do crit, and that's going to matter a lot more in those higher keys where you want to be able to make up for that DPS, where you want to be able to help burn things down quickly. But the haste and versatility is maximum survival. I do have my 4 set at this point in the season. You've got 4 charges on the vault, so those came easily. I think I got lucky and got it a couple weeks ago because I was able to get a couple pieces out of the vault itself. But then I did use three charges catalyst charges in order to get my 4 set. As far as trinkets, I got lucky and got a sack brood. There was nothing for it. It just came out of the vault, and it's a fantastic trinket. Gives you a lot of haste, gives you a ton of agility, so it is a fantastic trinket if you can get it. And then the other one I run is the refracting aggression module. This is a defensive trinket, and it effectively functions as a defensive cooldown. It lets me, when I taunt, it gives me a 2.2 million absorb shield every 1 minute. It only absorbs 50% of the damage I take, but that actually stretches the absorb shield out, so I really like that, and I'll talk about that when we get into the rotation part of things. For my weapon, I am using the Sky Piercing Drill Staff. Again, it's a haste versatility weapon. I just have Authority of Air on there, which is I believe the haste enchant. And that's it for gearing. So get that 4-piece. The 4-piece isn't that big of a deal, but it's pretty good. And I'll post a link to my talents below. They are nothing special, but there are a couple of things that I take that I do want to talk a little bit about. All right, over on the Guardian tree, you can see my talents laid out here. I'm not sure that these are necessarily the optimal talents, but they're the ones I like. I like Rend and Tear. It gives you a 6% damage reduction and as well as 6% damage dealt increase. Since that pairs nicely with all of our arcane damage buffs, I like those. It's plausible that that might be better used over here in the Scintillating Moonlight, or possibly in one of the other Thrash talents. I'm not really sure. But this is sort of what I stumbled into, and it's been working well for me. I haven't really run into any issues. For the most part, this technique will work with any build. We are using a Loon's Chosen. I really like Druid of the Claw, but it just doesn't hold up. Every time I've tried it, it's just falls short by 20% more damage taken and less damage dealt. It's simply not competitive. The only talent within the hero spec that's really critical is the Lunar Calling that turns Thrash into arcane damage, and so pairs nicely with those Thrash changes that we got. That then pairs with the Loon's Favored, where we're healed for arcane damage that we deal and things like that. Again, I'll post a link to these talents down below, but I believe it's a pretty standard talent set. Now, in terms of the rotation, I use a Gnome Sequencer macro for that. I've played around with some other ones, but I use my own. And it's a pretty straightforward one. We mangle, and then we bind Iron Fur into both our mangle and Thrash macro. With Thrash, we alternate that with Moonfire, which means we're only going to Moonfire after each Thrash. This keeps us from spamming Moonfire too much. And then we cast Lunar Beam, Rage of the Sleeper, Incarnation on cooldown. If we happen to have spare Rage, we'll cast Maul, and then Swipe. And how the Gnome Sequencer sequences work is that whenever you hit a button, it runs this macro. When you hit the button again, it runs this macro. When you hit it again, it runs this macro, and so on all the way down the list. And so the idea is that you can just spam this one button, and if you spam it quickly enough, and I spam mine about 4 times a second, 250 milliseconds or so between taps, that essentially in a global cooldown, it will run through each of these steps, and it will cast whichever one in this sort of priority list format is the first one that's off cooldown. Now, Swipe doesn't have a cooldown, so that will be the one we cast if nothing else is available. And if we look at our casts and our spells, you can see that we did cast Swipe 382 times, cast Moonfire 257 times, we cast Mangle 218 times, and so it generally tends to be about a 1-to-1 just hitting these things What it means is that I can sit there, I bind this to a thumb key on my mouse and simply tap that key over and over again while I'm in combat. Tap, 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 tap. And that's that. That's my rotation done and dusted and sorted, and that lets me focus on using my defensive cooldowns and managing the fight, which is one of, in my mind, the big advantage of being a bear tank, is that you can really focus on managing the fight. Now, going into bear form, I do have a couple of keybinds. I do bind Mangle, Thrash, and Swipe manually, so I can tap those easily as well. I have my Taunt on 4, my Interrupt on 7, so those are universal on any character with a Taunt. It's always on 4. On any character with an Interrupt, it's always on 7. 6 is my Cleanse, same deal there. And then 5 is my Self-Heal, and 8 and the equals key are my big defensives, and the minus key is my mount. And then my 9 is my ranged attack key, and 0 is just sort of a utility key, usually a personal defensive. In this case, it's a ground AoE. And then I've got my my various heals. And then I've got my various heals up here. So we will get regrowth procs, so I can go ahead and pop that. I've got my renewal. I've got my healing potion. Right now I'm using the Cave Dweller's Delight because I get them from snuffling and I'm not made of money. And then I've got my lock rocks when I need them to be, and I could bind them to a shift key if I wanted. But I like using the gnome sequencer sequence in order to do that. And again, I'll post that sequence in case you would like to use it yourself. Let's go ahead and take a look at a dungeon and see how I apply this to a key in order to work through it. Now, this is a pug group. I don't know any of these people. We do have run into a couple of issues on the first boss. We talk through it and are able to finish the key on time and do pretty well from that point forward. All right, let's go ahead and start this key. Oh, this was a pug group. Overall, I don't know this group. The damage was pretty solid. I did tell them before the group the strategy I wanted to use for how I was going to move on the first boss. I don't think that was communicated very clearly because we did have some issues on that first boss. With this first group, and anytime I pull a new pack, really, but especially the first group in a dungeon, I always hit a couple of defensive cooldowns. In this case, I used my my just a taunt, which gave me my absorb shield, as well as my Rage of the Sleeper and my incarnation. And that makes sure that any damage that I'm taking is nice and smoothed out, so that there is, no risk of danger of the healer being sort of surprised and overwhelmed, at least on my account. Anytime the healer has to go from not healing to healing, there's always a risk that they're not going to have the opportunity to ramp like they need. So anything I can do to smooth out that damage curve is going to be critically important. So as a result, on every pull, I try and have some kind of mitigation going up as I move into the group. And that's usually an alternation. That's usually alternating between Iron Fur and my my trinket, which is again the damage absorb shield on taunt. Now, these first groups in City of Threads aren't particularly dangerous. They tend to go down pretty easily. Just avoid the frontals on the big guys, interrupts where you can, and everything tends to go pretty smoothly up until we get to the first boss. So we will skip ahead to there. We do have the orb affix this week, which it's probably my least favorite of the affixes, at least as a tank, because it makes it the balance between positioning and controlling the fight and collecting the orbs and doing my part to be a part of that solution is always a hard balance to strike. So with these heralds, we want to make sure we're hitting the interrupts on the twist thoughts as late as we can. Since this is a pug, I'm hitting that at around 50%, so there's no question that it's going to get hit, but hopefully I'm not overlapping with anybody else who wants to hit it early. And the healer grabbed one there, which was great. All right, with this boss, you want to try and make sure the group is together when you move in, so that hopefully there's less ripping, because that rip does a fair bit of damage. And so I had told the group that I was going to back up whenever she does her cast, and I was trying to move as little as possible for that. What it is here is the orbs. So So I probably should have been a little better about not moving the boss to try and get those orbs or letting the group get them or communicating that in some way. But they ended up double stunning me with both sets of orbs as the boss does their tank buster, and that knocked me down. Took the res, got back up. Unfortunately, um, people were not stacked where I was coming up, and so when we then moved, um, again, I think the communication, something I certainly could have done better in terms of explaining what I was doing, where I was moving, and then the orbs again were an issue. So I ask if we want to do a reset. I try and position myself to not take hits from the orbs, um, but we keep rolling there. Go ahead and just keep working through the fight, working through the process. Indicate where I'm going to run with a ping. We managed to move that way, no problem. Um, and everything is going fine. Our damage is pretty low. The Warlock was really the heavy hitter in the group, and so losing them meant this was going to be a long fight. Turns out not to matter. They once again chunk me with the orbs right as the tank buster comes out, and so that is the end of that fight. So we talk through that a little bit, and basically I say, watch the orbs, and they say don't move so much, and so we negotiate that a little bit. Let's jump ahead. So we go in for another pull, and I try not to move. So in that case, the warrior ran out, got ripped in, ran out again, got ripped in again, and that's what killed him. Um, and I say, well, we're gonna try not to move. I try and take small baby steps as best I can. Try and ping where I'm gonna run. Try and make sure that I can move, give us space to work. Pick up orbs as best I can, all that stuff. We lose the hunter there as well. And I'm pinging where I want to go. And I'm not sure if it's where the communication or skill issue was on that one. Um, but the hunter starts to blame me for the damage, and I explain simply that I was just trying not to move, as I'd said. But we keep going. The rest of us at this point all seem to be on the same page. I'm trying to give us plenty of space. I'm trying to uh, do my best to accommodate, the requests of the DPS, because ultimately that's my role as the tank, is to be the lineman, and let them do their jobs of killing the boss, and do my bit as well. But I try and make sure that I'm giving them plenty of room. And it's always tricky because you have to balance, the entire fight with what they're doing, and ultimately as a tank you're making the decisions about where the boss is placed and how much space is being taken up and all that stuff. So they want more space. I do my best to give them more space, just aware that that might cost us. We're running out of room, so you can see I'm checking how much space is left, but they want to have the whole circle clear, or as much as I can give them. So we just keep rolling, Thing where I'm going to run, keep it going. And the boss eventually falls. At this point, you know, given some of the salt that we were seeing in that pool, I'm not sure if we're going, but everybody seems to stay on board. So I say, you know what, let's give it a go, see what happens. We pull the next guy here. And there is a queen up there. If you tag them with a range, like I did with that Moonfire there, you can actually pull them in and fight them with this guy, save, you know, 20, 30 seconds on the fight, on the key. So that's a technique I use here. It is helpful to announce that to the group so that everybody knows you're getting the Eye of the Queen, because they can one-shot you with this frontal. It puts this large blue cone on the ground. Anybody who gets hit by that will die. So you just have to be really careful with that. But we managed to clear it safely and then proceed through taking out the other Eyes of the Queen. That goes off without issue. Looks like the healer is trying to help coordinate. So I saw the healer had gone left to check that doorway. I always try and check that doorway if no one else is. Since I saw he was already headed that way, I followed the ghosts. We found the Eye of the Queen quickly, no problem. Go ahead and skip along. Then we head out. Now, when you're doing these 3 ads, you always want to start on the left and work clockwise around. So you get the left, then you get the fallen, then you get the last one to the right. And the reason for that is that the boss to the right of where you enter the city is right next to the guy you need to talk to after you get all 3 eyes. So after you kill all 3 Eyes of the Queen in the city, you need to talk to someone in order to open up the boss room. And he's in that wing to the right. So if you end somewhere else, you have to sort of go back there to talk to him. So you just always end there. I ended up clipping one of these people here. That's okay, because the third person is always like right next to where you enter the room. So that is, I've seen that, you know, talked about as a potential strategy, since there's no real time cost there, and I end up arriving with the same group. So if I'd actually like jumped into a web even sooner on purpose, then I probably could have beat him here. It may have been faster, but we all would have taken a chunk of damage, and so maybe not the best plan for that. But we managed to get things working out. One thing, the Eye of the Queen did move back there and then did a long cast, so missed some damage on him there. I should have been better about positioning the group on top of him. So that's an area that I should do better next time. Anyways, we pick up the Executor and then head on up into the boss room. This boss room is mostly tank and spank. Nothing really interesting happened here. The only sort of new mythic mechanic is that at one point dots go out on all the DPS, and so if, as a tank, if we have the capacity to do any sort of spot healing, or even just reduce the load on us so that the healer can focus on the people who need the healing more, that's our big responsibility there. So when that happens, I use it offensive, even though I wasn't targeted with the actual damage coming out, because I'm still getting meleeed, I'm still taking damage, and anything I can do to make it easier on the healer to cover them is what I do. And then I also keep an eye out and throw down a regrowth there on the hunter in order to keep him topped up. And again, just help out the healer wherever I can. The other mechanic is that in the second phase, there is a this Rime Dagger, which puts a sort of snow shield around the tank. That is again, just using mitigations there to try and make things as easy on the group as I can. Same deal here. I'm looking for someone to heal up. Again, pop the hunter with my regrowth. And the advantage of being a bear tank is that that's essentially a full heal whenever it procs, and it's up every 20 or 30 seconds. So that fight ends up not being an issue. We move through these groups. I actually forgot to pull another pack here. There's a pack just to the right at the top of these steps that I usually grab that I forgot here for some reason. And just missed them. But the result is that we're 3% short at the end of the dungeon. Not a big deal. There's plenty of trash right near the final boss, but that is something that I would do differently normally on this dungeon, is to make sure to grab an extra pack at this point, because these packs are not dangerous at all. They're just kind of easy trash. They go down quickly. I also grabbed both of these packs on the stairs here. So wait until this pack is at about half health so that we're not overwhelmed and have the ability to clear them up. And then grab that second pack on the stairs there, work my way through them. and then come up here to the guy at the top of the stairs. This guy is a dance, and he also does a poison on the group. So as a bear tank, we have a poison dispel. I go ahead and dispel the hunter since he seems to be taking a lot of damage at most points in this dungeon. So he's sort of become my priority for babysitting where I can. And that's not necessarily anything on him, just you know, the way the chips fall. So do my bit to help keep him alive and work through these. Did get some weird orbs here, which wasn't great, but ended up getting all 10 of them, and pull these two unnaturalers. Unfortunately, we did you know, duplicate some interrupts there, so we ended up not being able to hit them all and pulling some neophytes. The neophytes aren't dangerous, they're just extra trash. They don't count for anything, they don't do anything. The group wanted me to pull the trash into the boss room. I don't like doing that because those stairs make pulls weird and create line of sight issues, but at some point you got to work with your group, right? So do my best to play around their requests and things like that, make things easier for them. I say I'm going clockwise to give them a hint on how I'm going to be moving throughout the room. And what I generally try and do is put the boss in this sort of first position, and then whenever I absorb a shield, move him a couple yards, because each bubble I absorb sort of clears one. And then at around 60%, I want to have moved through a quarter of the room, because we're usually got some extra damage on top. And then again, during Dark Pulse, once again, you know, use defensives to mitigate my own damage, and then use my spot heals to help out my friends. And just continue working through each quarter of the room, about every 30 to 40%. Obviously, there are 4 quadrants, so you could do it every 25% at a bare minimum, but then you start to run out of space at the very end. And so it's just about absorbing those orbs and then popping a self-heal where I can, making sure I'm making use of my Frenzied Regeneration there, and keeping that rolling on cooldown in order to stay ahead of that. We had some face pulls of the neophytes here. Not that big a deal. The unnaturalers were not that dangerous. We were able to hit some interrupts on them and avoid any big knockbacks, so trash went down without issue. Here's something this trash pack, I was really pleased with what the group did. I made a point of pulling the Shadow Weaver out away from the big guy, because I hate pulling these two guys together. I've seen more wipes on this trash than any other trash in the dungeon, and it's just because people pull both of these big guys at the same time, and it hurts. It's a really hard fight with both of them active at once, at least as hard as the boss. Then we head over, pull the War Shell, and he does the Tremor Slam. The Tremor Slam is a big chunk of AoE on the group, and then summons the Scarabs, which chunk pretty good. So you have to make sure you're using defensives and kiting those where you can. We get some orbs and pick those up. Miss one of the orbs because, oh, I guess we managed to get them all there. That's fine. And then the DPS face pull the boss, which wasn't great. So once again, I pull the boss out, state that I'm going clockwise, and hope that they see it, hope that that's enough, and then mostly just try and stay ahead of it. Once again, using my self-heals, using my mitigations wherever I can. Whenever I see the orbs come out near the group, I try and back away from them. Do some shape-shifting to break out of my Umbral Weave, and then back away from the group and use a mitigation when she does the process of elimination. So that's a big hit on the tank and will kill anybody else who's there. So same deal, throw down my regrowth on the hunter, and pick up the ads and just sort of hold them there, and then just keep watching for these orbs. As soon as orbs start to come in, I want to make sure that I always have room to back up. So we do that. Those out of there, and then back up, hit my bark skin there, and take care of that. Orbs come out, we move away from them, and then as the orbs continue to jump after the group, we want to make sure that we always have sort of room to run. So we try and stay ahead of it. I go ahead and throw down a battle res on the warrior here because we need 3%. So we finish up this last group, and that's that. You know, tensions are still a little high, but we managed to beat the key. And with some communication, we were able to do pretty good. So overall, things went smoothly. So I compliment the group on the recovery, holding it together, say thank you for the key, and I dip out pretty quick.